The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus told his disciples this parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out at dawn to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with them for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. Going out about 9 o'clock, the landowner saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, "You too go into my vineyard, and I'll give you what is just." So they went off. And he went out again around noon and around 3 o'clock, and did likewise. Going out about 5 o'clock, the landowner found others standing around and said to them, "Why do you stand here idle all day?" They answered, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You too go into my vineyard." When it was evening, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Summon the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and ending with the first." When those who had started about 5 o'clock came, each received the usual daily wage. So when the first came, they thought that they would receive more, but each of them also got the usual wage. And on receiving it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, "These last ones worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who bore the day's heat, the day's burden and the heat." He said to one of them in reply, "My friend, I'm not cheating you. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what is yours and go. What if I wish to give this last one the same as you? Or am I not free to do as I wish with my own money? Are you envious because I am generous? Thus, the last will be last, the last will be first, and the first will be last." The Gospel of the Lord. My dear friends, the readings this Sunday refer to how much the wisdom of God surpasses our human categories of value and judgment. The prophet Isaiah exhorts his people to search actively for the Lord, and he reminds them that the Lord's ways are not always obvious to us. The gospel presents us with a parable that demonstrates the difference between our spontaneous judgments and God's ways. Our natural reaction to this parable would be, "This is not fair." We sympathize with the laborers who worked all day, only to find out that they made not a penny more than those who worked for only an hour. This is an obvious injustice. What's the point of having a daily wage and an hourly wage if the numbers are the same? My dear friends, in the first reading, we hear the Lord tell Isaiah, "My thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways." Yes, from our perspective, The landowner's arrangement is unfair, and the consequences for the hardest workers is an injustice. But our perspective is flawed. God, who is the source of infinite love, infinite mercy, and infinite generosity, sees this arrangement much differently. Because no one hired us, this is the response of the laborers who are still standing around at about 5 o'clock. Why hasn't anyone hired these workers? Perhaps they were weak or disabled. Perhaps they were lazy or uncooperative. Quite likely, they were already rejected by every landowner, but not this one. Dear friends, the kingdom of heaven welcomes even those who have been rejected, those who have been waiting, who did not bear the heavy burden. God's mercy and acceptance are unrestricted. All are welcome to God's kingdom. We can apply this parable to ourselves. People are called to Christ at different times in their lives. Some are baptized as toddlers, in the morning as babies. I was baptized 3 days after I was born. Just before my mom left the Catholic hospital, I had to be baptized. Others experience the call from the Lord in their teenage years. Others in mid-afternoon as adults, and still others as seniors. But at any age, we can be drawn to Christ or are called to be closer to Christ. Just notice that the landowner in the parable did not compare one group of workers with another. They were all paid because they answered the call. The same is true for us. The Lord does not compare us with each other. Each one of us has a unique combination of talents, challenges, and opportunities in life. The problems and opportunities may be the same, but the combination is always unique. The mix of burdens and graces we experience are never exactly the same to anyone else's. What the Lord asks of each one of us is that we follow him with whatever we have and as best as we can. We should not look at the person next to us, how that person answers the call, lest we become envious, because we're all different. We have different ways of, receiving all that. If you know somebody who has not been at Mass, don't judge them. You don't know why they have not been. Probably by your way of life, you will bring them back. But don't judge them. They have a story. Probably they are hurting. But the Lord wants us to respond. And as we respond, probably others also follow suit. My dear friends, today's gospel text holds many levels of meaning. One surely pertains to God's grace and salvation. We learn that God showers abundant graces on persons who, in our fallible estimation, have not lived especially good lives. Individuals like the good thief, for example, who was crucified with our Lord. He received salvation just at the end. You remember when Jesus told him, today you'll be with me in paradise. Even in cases of so-called deathbed conversations, there is much more we don't know. Much that God alone knows. We never know, for instance, how difficult a person struggles against a serious sin. And that's why we leave it to the Lord, because He's generous and merciful. In this sense, my dear friends, the gospel provides hope for those who have been idle in the Lord's vineyard. It does not condone such idleness, of course not. But can't the fact that those who were hired last were given the same recompense as those who were hired first be translated into the principle that it's never too late for anyone to enjoy God's friendship? God calls us all the time. God's mathematics is not ours. All of us are equally inefficient and unworthy before God. My dear friends, it's true, most of us have a strong sense of what we are owed. Yet God can never be caught in our narrow frame or calculus. We cannot fully grasp God's providence and should not pretend to do so, except where His freedom He has revealed it to us. God has freely entered into a covenant with Israel, and in the passion of Christ has struck a new covenant in His blood, and that's why we are redeemed. My dear friends, if we have experienced such generosity of God's love in our lives, we should also try to imitate it in our dealings with others. As I said at the beginning of Mass, today is also Catechetical Sunday. It's a wonderful opportunity for all of us baptized to reflect on the role we play in handing on the faith and being witnesses to the gospel. We are here because someone shared their faith with us. They might have been our parents or a friend. And that's why today I would like to thank all the 17 catechists that we have in our parish. Thank you for sharing your faith with others in the community.